Good evening, everybody. My name is Tamar Russell Brown from Gallery Sitka. We are located in Shirley, Massachusetts, and we have a fall, so late summer, early fall show that we've titled Harvest. And every Friday at 6 o'clock, we're interviewing one of the artists who is part of this juried show. The juried show was juried by three wonderful women. Their names are Elizabeth Whelan from Martha's Vineyard, and Jennifer Jean Okumura from Boston, and also Pat Gericke from New York. They juried in a number of women's work that these women are part of an organization called the Women's Caucus for Art, and a number of other women from the Northeast. So tonight we have with us CM Judge. She is local to Fitchburg, so very close to me and the gallery, which is in Shirley, Mass. She's an intermediate artist, and she directs Moongate Studio, which is in Fitchburg, and she creates paintings, which we're going to see tonight, her paintings, and also drawings and installations and some video art, which I hope we get to, because that's kind of fun. She's also an educator with the Sizer School, which is in Fitchburg, and she has some interesting background in terms of her education, which I would really like to get to as well. So I think we'll start with that. CM. I think one little note, just housekeeping things. We have Doreen Lascala, who's a local fine artist, who's going to moderate a little bit, and so we'll take questions at the end, and she will do those questions. Also, we are being filmed, so if you don't want your face on the camera, turn your video feature off. And we are recording this, so it should be online for later. So with that, we'd like to get CM involved. CM, can you tell us a bit about your education? I think it's really interesting. I'm going to leave it to you to tell us about it.
Well, my college education started at what was once called the University of Lowell, Massachusetts, where I majored in drawing and painting and minored in art history and philosophy. At that point in my life, I had been mostly exposed to working two-dimensionally and just fell in love with the idea of an extended gaze, like the ability to look at and observe the world, have that come through my sensorium and imagine, and amazingly, something happens on a page or with a paintbrush. And that deep looking was one of those things that I thought was one of the most compelling aspects in my life. After I completed my undergraduate degree, I made the decision that although painting is wonderful, that I wanted to have an experience of sculpture. Like I started to find like I wanted to free the canvas from the stretchers and make something three-dimensional. And that led me to MIT, where I did my graduate work at the Center for Advanced Visual Studies. And that intersection of how science and art can enhance one another. Again, you keep in mind that scientists look deeply at the world. That's what they do. They're looking and sensing the patterns and the dynamic aspect of our glorious universe. And so this felt like a very natural place for me, especially since my paintings tend to have that theme as well.
I actually would like to ask a little bit more about that because I, as far as I know, I don't know anyone and any artists who have science in their education or the background. How do you feel, besides looking closely at something, how do the two go together?
I think there's a natural synergy between anybody who's looking at the world in a reflective way. Scientists may be measuring and they may be theorizing in a way. Artists are often looking at the world around them and asking the same question, like, why is it like this? And what impact do the kinds of images I make have? And so, you know, science is constantly evolving, and it's a language, like visual art is a language. There's a vocabulary that goes with it. That's true for science as well. One is thought to be objective and the other non-objective, or subjective, but I actually think you could argue that both ways. It's amazing what human beings can upon deep reflection, discover about themselves and the world around them. And I think scientists and artists are like that. When I was in graduate school, I worked with Michael Rubner in polymer science, and he was someone who I could sit down with very comfortably. He was also an aesthete. And so our ability to share together was wonderful. And I really appreciated his openness. I remember sitting across from him and he said to me, "Oh, I'm glad to meet you. I'm sure you have something to teach me." And it's that openness of spirit that I've found with scientists, and the same with artists, that I think we really share together.
That's really a wonderful match. I never thought of that before.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you have received something from an excellence in art from a society in Paris, and I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, sure. Yes, that was quite an honor last summer. Imagine if it was this summer. Wow, what a difference 1 year makes, right? I was invited by Dominique Bouteau to give a portfolio to be reviewed in Paris. It's a Society of Arts, Letters, and Sciences, and they are a wonderful organization that has over 100-year history of awarding scientists and artists and writers and choreographers and people of that sort who are excited to be creating and to be discovering. And they honor a certain number of individuals each year, and I was very blessed to have been chosen.
That's incredible. And just from a networking perspective, I would like to ask a question about that, because I think it might be helpful for some of the guests tonight. So
yeah, sure.
From a networking perspective, how did you have that introduction to that person where you were able to submit your portfolio?
Well, interestingly, it was through the Boston Women's Caucus for Art. I was in the process of reorganizing the chapter in Boston and trying to get it off it had gone dormant for a while, and I just thought that was a shame. And I was in Boston working with artists from there, trying to reestablish the group. And Dominique was one of the artists who actually hailed from Nashua, New Hampshire, who came to Boston to expand her circle of artist friends and collaborators. And a few years later, she called and said, you know, I'm the person who nominates people for this award, and in the United States, I'm the representative, and I'd like you to apply.
That's incredible. So that goes in us jumping into that, which is not something I prepared, but I think we could talk about the Women's Caucus for Art, which we did with Susan last week, and that's how we know all of you, is that you're members of this organization. Yeah. So maybe I could just, it's the Women's Caucus for Arts, and we invited the North Central Mass chapter to this show, as well as the New Hampshire pod, I believe, one of the pods.
Yes.
The whole state. But I wonder, could you tell everyone what the organization is and?
Oh, sure.
Maybe?
Sure. The Women's Caucus for Art was founded in 1972 as a caucus of the College Art Association, which is the premier group in the United States, national group, where academics who are teaching all of the arts would come together to share their scholarship and just connect with colleagues. It happens, there's a conference every single year, and it happens around the country. And it allows, of course, all of us art fanatics to be able to go to different cities throughout the US and to learn from experts there about the artwork that they possess. So very dynamic group of people. I'm sorry, yes?
I think it's amazing. Go ahead.
Yeah, so, you know, in 1972, female academics were finding that they were sidelined, not being offered similar salaries, not being promoted, and that in the art world, that was very much, and actually continues to be, hugely male-dominated in the sense of what museums are showing. And when you get up to that upper tier of exhibition opportunities and scholarship. And so they just simply made the decision that they realized that the only way to combat that and really begin to understand it and to own it and to be figuring out what the activist aspects should be for them to take on, they founded the group. From there, chapters began throughout the United States, and I don't know, there are a number of chapters, I want to say there are 30 chapters throughout the US.
I think it's great. So if a young female artist wanted to get involved, what would be the process for her maybe to find a chapter that would accept her? What's the process for a new artist, a young woman?
Go to the national website, which it's www.nationalwca.org, and check that out. And I think for young women, I think it's especially warms the heart to know that there are women who have been there before you. They've been doing it a long time, and they're very willing to share their knowledge and their networking. It's such a generous group of women.
Well, I've been amazed by all the women I've met through the organization locally. So thank you very much for telling us a bit about that. So now maybe we can shift to your work. This was the name of the show is Harvest. So I thought first I would ask you personally, what does that mean for yourself, the term harvest? This time
it was so enjoyable last week to see Susan's work and its earth connection and its lusciousness and its just simplified beauty. Very elegant, dynamic work, so rooted in the earth and the structures of the earth, and how the dynamic aspect of how shapes and forms come together. I love her distillation of that. And as I was listening, I thought that's so true, that artists can do that. Very strong artists can do that. And for me, interestingly, it's always been about the confluence of the physical and the spiritual. So for me, I'm drawn to, as a matter of fact, my son jokes with me when we go on road trips, and he'll say, cows, crops, and clouds. I should have a t-shirt made of this for you, because I have to know what crops are being grown. I'm concerned for farmers. I love to see animals grazing, and the sky, of course, is miraculous. So, but it's true. So I'm very drawn to that. Where it takes me visually is to abstraction and trying to capture literally that miraculous nature. What is it about our lives? Our lives are so extraordinary if you stop and really just think about it.
They really are. And without food, we don't exist.
Right. You know, I think of a parable in Mark 13 about the mustard seed. You know, human being takes this little itty bitty seed and sows it. And then miraculously, this enormous plant comes from it. That's life force, that's energy, that's the great creator. And I think artists naturally participate in that on some level, on how do we connect to what is both earthly and divine. And food is certainly at that intersection, I think.
Yeah, because it's all connected, right?
It's sustaining, correct. Yeah.
So we are going to flip the screen so I can let everybody see your painting. And then I thought what we could do is maybe you can tell us about this series and this painting, and then we can click through some of the others and talk about them. And just everyone who's jumping in, my name is Tamar Russell-Brown from Gallery Sitka. We're talking with C.M. Judge this evening about her piece that was juried into our Harvest show. And we're keeping questions to the end, but you can always put them in the chat, and Doreen, who's helping me, can type you an answer if she knows it. Otherwise, we'll wait to talk to CM with questions at the end. So we're going to flip the screen and show the work. So this is Risen 4, if I'm not mistaken, right, CM?
That's right.
So could you tell us about this, what it's made with, the medium, and then the size, and then a bit about this series?
Sure. This is an acrylic on canvas. It's 36 inches by 36 inches. And it's a piece from the middle of a series called Risen. And again, I'm interested in the confluence of like how things come together, both in the physical world and the spiritual world. And I'd worked on a previous series where I understood I was making forms that were engaging to me, but I also felt there was a lack of orderliness and that I wasn't situating the viewer in a position that was as compelling as it could be. I still had to make those paintings. I didn't consider them successful. But when I began these few paintings, I began to realize, oh, I think I'm situating the viewer, the tension between that which is free and flowing versus that which is structured, in a place where I'm very engaged. And so these became a reflection on life energy and the connection to the earth.
And that's what the entire series is about.
Yeah, right. And how it's a life cycle. We rise and we fall. So this is the aspect where I'm thinking we are risen. You can think of that in a Christian sense. You can think of it as an emotional sense. You could think of it as a physical sense.
Which is the wonderful thing that I love about abstract. You can place yourself in the image and make it what you need and what you want.
Mm-hmm. So this is actually the first one in that series, in the Risen series. And I, again, was the interplay of dark and light interested me. And the color is intuitive. I just sense strongly that certain colors make sense. They make visual sense and they make, for me, a spiritual sense. So this is number one.
So would this be number two?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It really makes sense.
Yeah, I can see the progression.
Yeah.
How simple can you get and still be within that same realm? You know, painting is one of these processes where you luxuriate in the placement of paint. Color changes so much depending on the light that you're seeing the work in. And so there's this constant interplay around how do I keep my strokes individuated and fresh and yet still communicate form. And so from my perspective, I want an element of this to feel, and they are very spontaneous. I don't plan them, like I haven't planned this out exactly. I know generally the colors, and I'm in the process of making marks that I feel are alive. There's a liveliness to those marks. They begin almost in a kind of syncopation between one another. They begin to evolve. Like an improvisational jazz piece, you know, where one shape or color begins to make it sound, and then another one makes sense in relationship to that. The difference between hard edges and soft edges, what I want the focus to become, and the focus becomes, it's not something I've predetermined. Focus becomes something that evolves in the piece. And what do you leave alone, and what do you keep working toward? And I...
Sorry, can we mute? That is. Stop sharing and check. Can we mute everyone? Thank you. Sorry about that. Can you guys keep yourselves on mute, everyone? Thank you. So I wanted to ask, how much planning is there that goes into the colors?
Well, I have to say, when I did, not this one, but the previous one, what happened was I created that painting, and then, I have a vocabulary for this series. Like, I knew that this particular one had the elements of what I considered to be a dynamic visual experience. In other words, I felt that this painting made me journey somewhere. And much of my work deals with journey, getting from here to there. Whether it's a seasonal passing, whether it's a physical space, whether it's an emotional journey or spiritual one, there's this element. So the color, for me, and you'll notice in this piece, for example, there's a reversing out of color with dark and light. These colors transcend my natural environment. I mean, I don't normally see these colors, and that excited me. And I think also the dynamic aspect of brush marks and getting these things to cohese so it feels like a space you can enter excites me. And I do tend to be using these days fairly warm colors. I have a few cool ones, but I love these magenta orange combinations very much.
Yeah, they're very warm, and it makes sense that this one fit. It's the harvest colors. It's what
Right.
we live in the Northeast does this time of year. I wanted to ask too, with these brown bars that are in the images, what do they symbolize for you?
So the verticals for me, and it's funny, I've had people ask me, tell me about the trees and tell me about, everybody has, it's been so interesting to see what people view them as. For me, they're points where the viewer can establish their relationship to the image behind them, both in terms of how you relate to that organic image, and then also where you personally would be in the space, in that implied space.
So it offers some stability and some safety.
Yes, exactly, and a vantage point, and a kind of way of allowing those colors to have other partners, right? Going from dark to light or light to dark. There's a contrast that's set up, and I've always loved this sense of gateway or movement through one space to another.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
You know this one.
I love this one. It's so powerful.
Oh, thank you. So this is the largest piece. Is it 4 by 6? I think.
I don't have the size on it.
It's quite large. It always amazes me when this is put on a huge wall, how it dwarfs into like seeming something quite modestly scaled, but in fact, yes, it's quite tall and quite. So this is very enveloping. So this comes before the Risen series, but again, I think it's a stepping stone to that. I became really excited, and I've always loved grand brushstrokes that are pure. And it reminds me of music, the way you hear a clear, clean, resonant note, and it echoes. And when one paints, there's a tendency, especially for beginners, but anybody who paints, to sort of overwork things. And so this painting was all about putting a mark down and standing back and letting it exist. And so although there are many layers, there's not a tremendous amount of mixing, actually. Mix the color off canvas and then place it. Sometimes the strokes are subtle, and other times they're rather bold. But to me, this is a piece that invites, again, a journey.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's very powerful.
And this is where Risen has taken me. And what I'm perplexed by, I wanted to share this because it's in process. I mean, the piece is finished, but the series is in process. In here, I noticed that I had this dire need to tighten things up and to create this purple space in the center that, for me, has a really strong spiritual connotation. I have found in my prayer life that purple, the color purple, has I've been receiving the color purple. And so this was my response to that. And I was thinking of the center section as having this deep spiritual component. And then as one goes beyond that to the outside edge, colors become more earth-like or more skin-like.
Very interesting. This one has a lot of purple. So is there any relation
to this? So this is a really small painting. The one previous one, is 36 by 36, so it's sizable. This little one is just, I think it's 12 by 12. But I included this because I feel, again, that the elements of the larger paintings and the more recent series can be found in this painting, where I find myself making bars. Again, there's this sense of three and a sense of looking through something to something else. So it's exciting to make little paintings that as sketches. I'm sure many of the artists with us today do the same thing. You start with smaller pieces and find, again, your vocabulary as you move forward. Some people work with the same vocabulary their entire life, which is very exciting. I love to see artists have a continuity through their work over long periods. And other artists like me have a sensibility, but it may translate into different media, which is why I describe myself as an intermedia artist, because sometimes I'm painting and other times I might be making video installations.
So let's stop here at this one.
Another really, yeah, it's a really small painting, again, 12 by 12. I'm really attracted to that center area. And
yeah, it's hard to miss.
Yeah, it's hard to miss. And playing again with strokes, really feeling in this painting, that the painting behind me, for example, those bolder strokes appeal to me more than these. And yet I'm always delighted to see this itty bitty painting on a wall, because this little painting makes it large. Because you go someplace with this painting, right?
Yeah, you really
it surprised me. I saw this in a show in New Hampshire, and I took a double take because it was my work. And it was actually by the bathroom, which, you know, sometimes artists can get very kind of uppity about. But I was delighted because it was so vibrant. And I thought, yeah, that was a good place for it. It just absolutely holds the space. And not all paintings do, nor are they meant to. It just happens to be this one does.
It really does. And then what's this one?
So this was my interest in still the same series, but looking at a more earthly image and an invitation upward. I thought of this as this piece that sort of elevated my thinking. It was an invitation to that kind of thinking. And I'm, you know, very drawn to the mountains in New Hampshire and have a long history with that state. And I became really interested in what happens if the sensibility for risen becomes more regional and more specific.
Yeah, it's definitely earthy. I love it. It's wonderful. Mm-hmm. What's the time period when this one was done compared to the Risen series, these others?
I think all the Risens are very late 2018, most 2019, the last couple 2020, so the last few years.
So this green and blue one
right in the middle of the series. Yeah. You know, sometimes color speaks to me very strongly, and I just know there has to be one with that set of colors, and just go for it. You know, what's probably seems very simple about this painting, but which actually turned out to be challenging, was finding how that center strip occupies the space and unites it rather than divides it. And then, of course, my white or lighter bands, the light blue in this case, how they coexist with what's behind them. So it was, it seems to me, when I look at it, very simple, but in fact, create it was, took some time to get it right.
It's wonderful. It's like nature.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I like that part about it.
This one here, I wanted to talk a little bit about your work at the Sizer School. I remember showing this one in downtown Fitchburg at the gallery at the show. And I remember a story that you told about a comment that a young girl made in your class, and I wondered if you might be able to share that with us.
Oh, what did I tell you?
I'm going to not remember the details very well, but she looked at the painting. I believe it was this painting.
Yes. Oh, I know what you mean. I just connected. It was actually a parent of a student.
Okay.
So interestingly, I'm sure many artists with us tonight have this experience, especially if you work abstractly, that people can begin to say things like, well, I don't really know if they paint well because I don't know if they can paint anything that looks like anything. So, and the inspiration for this painting, oddly, was I was invited to apply for a college teaching position. And the person who invited me said, oh, and by the way, make sure you include something realistic, a number of realistic paintings, because we can't tell with this abstract stuff whether you can actually do it and whether you could teach it. To which I thought to myself, you're kidding. But it was one of those moments where I thought, well, what if I were to paint representationally these days? What would I choose to paint? So rather than being just totally turned off, I thought, well, I'll make a painting. So this is acrylic on wood, and I had a wonderful time painting it. I was trained as a traditional painter who traditional still life paintings, figurative paintings that look like the person or the thing. And I always think of abstraction as being involved in exactly the same kind of dialogue. The only difference is your goals are a little bit different. So in this painting, which to me is speaks perfectly of our current season of summer, I was trying to capture, the title of this is 5, this notion of what it's like to be 5. That again, and it's a part of the growth cycle, it's part of the life cycle. The moment when that child fits under that aluminum railing going into the pool, it's just such a short time where they can heave their body weight up and stick their toes to make themselves hang in exactly that way. So when I'm teaching students at Sizer for opening nights with parents, I tend to show this painting because it automatically says to them, oh, that art teacher actually knows how to do this and they can help my child learn it. It's just an easier way, entree in with people. And so one night I had a gentleman, a very quiet gentleman. I had about maybe 15 people, parents in the room. And I showed the painting. And afterwards he came up to me and he just said, this painting brings tears to my eyes because that is my son. That is my son. And if my wife was here, she would have been sobbing and you would have been wondering why. And so you never know what's going to touch people. We all have tender memories of who we are and how we are. And there is something very, very precious about being able to record those moments. And then, one of the things I love most about art is then we have these moments of shared humanity, right? Where we can talk about these and celebrate them.
And that's one thing that I think I've really enjoyed about your Women's Caucus organization is that this is on a personal note, being around those of you in the group, the majority of you being mothers. There was a lot of conversation I can remember 2 summers ago at someone's home when you were doing a little retreat that was about motherhood, and all of you discussed that as artists. And so that was really exciting to listen to as a non-mother. So I really appreciate talking with you guys about that. I also wanted to have a little bit of a discussion, so aside from our harvest show, about your video work, because I'm not familiar with that media at all. And it was very new to me when I had the gallery on Main Street to have a film. And we had a community that came and we watched, it's FemLink. Is that the correct term?
Yes, FemLink.
And I wanted to hear a little bit about the story and the process of how you created, or how that film, I should say, was created, and a little bit about that topic.
Oh, sure. FemLink is an organization of women video artists from around the globe. It's a project that Véronique Sapin, a French video artist, and I began 20 some odd years ago. One of the things we found, we were showing our work in various international venues. There are video festivals throughout Europe, for example. That's where we met, in Clermont-Ferrand in France, in the central part of France, where we both were doing installations, and we became fast friends. It's really always an honor to be in a situation where you meet your counterpart in another culture, right? And we just immediately hit it off. And when we got back, she was actually at that time living in Montreal, in Canada, and I'm, of course, here in Fitchburg. And I was at the time collaborating with a Japanese artist at Sushi Ogata, and Véronique said to me, how about me? Why don't you collaborate with me too? It was one of those marvelous moments, to which I, of course, her work is so strong, so powerful, so spirited. extraordinary work. Of course, I was thrilled, and I said, absolutely. So we tried to decide what would we do? What would our work look like? And I think we both initially assumed it should be our work together in some way, both collaborating in some fashion. But our dreams got kind of big, and we thought, this is what we're not seeing. Like Tamar, we're not seeing the conversation about motherhood around the table at any of these festivals. Like there's still, in that field, there was such a heavy emphasis on other kinds of topics, and that women video artists were not getting together to show their work as often. There wasn't a way to do that very easily, and there wasn't a platform. And so FemLink was born. We literally just typed to one another until we were blue in the face trying to decide on a structure. So fortunately, Veronique is a dramatic and dynamic thinker and knew immediately that our structure should be one video by a female artist around a certain theme. And so we decided collectively on a theme, and we reached out to, I think, our first 35 artists. And much to our, really astoundingly, 33 of them said, absolutely, we're in. And that's how we had our first collage. And 20 years later, we have 15 collages forth or more, 15 or 17, 18. It's, the website is www.femlink.org, all lowercase. And so I've had the privilege of taking that work to various venues here in the United States and abroad to share this amazing work by these talented women.
So I wondered if we could watch the link that you sent me. It's only 2 minutes, I think.
Well, the link I sent was a piece I did for FemLink.
Your piece, okay.
Actually, I could show the other though. It's an interesting thought. Yeah, so I can set up. So one of our themes was female. Very late in the game, we decided, well, we should maybe reflect on femininity. What does female mean? Fascinating set of responses to that. And for me, I was watching at the time my mother aging and my niece blossoming. Someone at the spring of their life and someone in the winter of their life. And I began to think strongly about that inner dialogue that women have. So let's see if I can do this. Let me try to pull this up.
Share a screen at the bottom.
Yep, I'm just gonna, let me pull it up first and then I'll share it. Or I should share it first.
Joining us, by the way, my name is Tamar from Gallery Sitka in Shirley, Mass. We're talking with artist C.M. Judge this evening about her piece that's part of our Harvest show. If you go to our website, it's gallerysitka.com. There's a Harvest name right at the top in the navigation, and that's where all the work is, and CM's work is there. And we're interviewing her this evening, and I think we're about to watch a video, which is exciting.
I think so. I'm going to do screen share. All right, here we go. By the way, it's only 2 minutes, just so you know.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
So are you still producing video work?
Yes, absolutely.
And the project FemLink, are there other artists still participating? Is that still a project that is ongoing?
Oh, it is. Yes, we have 168 artists worldwide from, I want to say from, I think 62 countries. I think it was 149 in terms of artists. I think it's gone up by a few. So that's always exciting.
And how often are you producing a film or something that's presented to the public?
Well, interestingly, normally it was once a year, maybe twice, depending on the themes. We also have a video about with male video artists actually making videos about female artists, which we thought would be quite wonderful to try and see what that was like. That's in process. But right now, actually, what we're working on is our 25th anniversary book. And so we have a documentation catalog that we did a few years ago, but we thought we would try to actually gather together the scholarship about the project. So that's our current work that we're doing.
So if anyone wants to purchase the book, how can they find that?
Probably the best thing to do would be to contact me. I can send you a link to our first catalog so you could see what that book is like. It really talks about all the artists. So if you're interested in women video artists, it's a great, because these are really extraordinary artists from each of these countries. The way we curated this was to speak to the best curators in each country and say, hey, if you had, who would you choose to have be in this project? And they told us, and then we went to those artists. So it's quite a lovely group.
Very interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Oh, you're welcome.
So I wanted to ask if anyone would like to ask CM any questions. We have 15 minutes left. We had one person asking about the website, which I think Doreen took care of. I know the Central Mass Group does have their own website as well. But CM, maybe you could put the link in for the FemLink. It's beyond the link that I think Doreen put it up there, did she?
Let me check.
Did you add that?
I have femlink.org on there in the chat room, as well as the WCA.
Nope, Doreen did it perfectly.
Perfect.
Yep.
Great.
Yep.
If anyone has any questions, you can pop them in the chat, or we can take your questions live. And we want to thank CM for being with us this evening. It's really been an honor to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so delighted to be with you all.
It's a lot of fun. So as far as Fitchburg, my final questions, if nobody else has any questions.
I have a quick question, actually.
Welcome.
Hi, hi everyone. I'm Emanuela. I just wanted to make a comment earlier, what you're stating about science and art, because I work as a scientist, I work in epidemiology, but I also do photography and poetry, and I just wanted to say I really appreciated what you stated earlier, and I think while we do a lot of observing and theorizing, I do know that among other scientists I know who happen to be artists, like that we're constantly, inspired by what we see, whether it's in nature or human anatomy or, yeah. So it's kind of interesting, the intersection of the two.
Absolutely. Well said. It's very exciting. Makes complete sense to me. I'd love to see your work. If you could put a connection in the chat, I'd love to see it.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Manuela. Anyone else like to jump in with any comments or questions? We'll take them.
I don't see, this is Doreen. I don't see any questions, but I do have a comment from Iffy Berg over on Facebook, and addressed to Catherine, and she says she loves your new work, Catherine. It shows the spiritual side, but your work has always had this mystical quality. So, and she thought the film was also very beautiful.
Oh, thank you so much, Iffy. I really, thank you.
And,
Yeah.
and I think there's something in the chat too from Linda. She said that the work is beautiful. The video probably right there at the end.
Thank you.
That's what I was going to say. You too.
Thank you so much.
So CM, really quickly, how did you come to be in Fitchburg, if you don't mind me asking?
I was hired as the art teacher at Monty Tech.
Monty Tech.
Yeah, I was hired to start the art program at Monty Tech. This was in the period when Massachusetts made the decision that all schools would have to have art offered. And they got a little jump start on it and hired me in, like in October, kind of an odd time to be hired, with the provision if I could get enough students to sign up for art, I could have a job. And I did, we did. Kids were, of course, excited to take art. Very, so that's how I landed in Fitchburg. And at Fitchburg, at Monty Tech, my husband-to-be worked there. So we met and I decided to stay.
That's a great story. I didn't know that.
Yeah, he taught English. He'd be hanging out. And then actually the then superintendent, Caucus, decided we should both do the yearbook. So we spent hours and hours on the yearbook and fell in love.
It's really wonderful. Well, I would have to say that yourself, some of these other women that we've talked to who've moved here for educational reasons, you guys are a gift to the community, and any artist is a gift to the community. It's a wonderful thing to have artists in the community and to support them, right? To be the art locally. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for stopping in. Great to see so many faces. I'm sending you virtual hugs.
So thank you, everybody. I hope you have a great evening. We'll be back next Friday again at 6 o'clock. Also, check out the website. It's gallerysitka.com. There's a link for Harvest. You'll see the jurors at the top and then all the women's work below. So check it out and tell us what you think. And we thank you all for joining us this evening. It was really
Tamar, am I allowed to put a plug in for you?
Sure.
Okay. Because I see a lot of artist friends from Boston and New Hampshire and various places. And I just want to say, you know when you're looking for a good gallery and a gallerist who understands you and cares about you and whose heart is always in the right place and who is passionate about what she does, that's Tamar. So just putting a little thought in your mind about this is an amazing person and she's someone you should know. So.
Gosh, that's tough. I can't. That's just.
You have to say anything.
Okay.
That's what I needed to say. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Well, it's a hard time, CM. That's a whole other topic. We could keep going. What's the future of galleries? What's the future of the art business? I had an artist reach out locally also, and she said, this is a hard time for everyone. But I said, this is another interesting thing. This morning, I had to pick up some artwork at a location that's in our region because there was a shift in personnel, and I just don't know the new personnel and didn't trust the situation. So I said, I need to go get the work. And I got there, and I had a conversation with one of the board members because this organization's run by a board. And he said they were kind of looking for options of what to do with certain spaces and this and this. And I said, well, you should open it up to the art community. There is a local art community. Everyone needs affordable space, which seems to be an issue here. And he goes, well, that's something I had never thought of. So, I think there is a future, definitely for the art world. I don't know the future of galleries in the future. We'll see how things shake up after all this. But we need art. I think that's the whole interesting thing about the Massachusetts Cultural Council is the concept of injecting a community with artists and their abilities and their ideas. Is what makes a community more prosperous and beautiful. Quite frankly. So thank you. Your passion and articulate style about art is beautiful. Thank you, Carolyn. Talking to see him. Let's see. Thank you, Kat, from Julie Sheehan.
Oh, thanks, Julie.
And Susan. You'll have to save the chat.
Thank you, everyone, so much.
Have a great night, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, CM. Beautiful.
Thank you. So good seeing you all.